At UFC 319, we saw Khamzat Chimaev defeat Dracus du Plessis, the reigning UFC middleweight champion, to become the new 185-pound champion. And he didn't just beat him, he did so in dominant fashion and delivered one of the most dominant performances that we've ever seen in a championship bout. I had it Khamzat Chimaev 50-42. I had 3 10-8s in favor of Khamzat Chimaev. The judges saw it a little bit differently. They had it 50-44 all around, giving 1 10-8 to Chimaev. But regardless of that, Chimaev landed the most total strikes in a UFC bout in history, 529 out of 567 attempted. He did so while finishing with 21 minutes and 40 seconds of control time, while landing 12 takedowns of 17 attempts. This was just everything that Chimaev was built up to be over 5 years ago when he entered the UFC. Dominant, skilled, versatile, everything that you thought he was, he delivered that on the biggest stage and more by becoming the champion, by, as I said, dominating Dracus du Plessis. Not just, a short reigning champion, a guy who was a champion for over a year and a half, and he beat Israel Adesanya. He beat Sean Strickland twice, the former champion. So this was really impressive. And although Chimaev was nearly a 3-1 favorite, it still was shocking to see, because you don't see this a lot of times. Let alone a challenger. You don't even see champions dominate people like this. The last couple dominant performances I can think of is, like Izzy against Jared Cannonier. Izzy against Vittori was dominant. Volk and Usman both have had dominant performances through their title run. But to see a guy like this just go out there and from the start of this fight, you could clearly see that the guys were on two different levels. Chimaev just easily took Dracus down with his quickness, speed, strength, everything combined. Chimaev has it all. He's now 15-0, and although he did not finish this fight and did pick up his third win by decision in his career, that to me actually might be the most impressive thing, because for the longest time, and when Chimaev first came to the UFC, he was known as a quick finisher, knockout artist, and a couple submissions in the last couple years. But now he's proved that he can beat really good fighters and the best fighters in the world by decision on the judges' scorecard throughout 3 or 5 rounds, and that cardio is not an issue. That can be put to bed. Everybody always wanted to talk about, Chimaev doesn't have the greatest cardio. That can't be said anymore. He beat Kamaru Usman by decision. He beat Gilbert Burns by decision, and now he beat Dracus du Plessis by decision, and did it in one of the most dominant performances in UFC history. Enough great things can't be said about Khamzat Chimaev's performances. It was that good, and I just don't see anyone touching this guy in the future. DraftKings Sportsbook actually has odds for his future opponents potentially, because the two biggest fights in the middleweight division between the top 4 contenders, to me, 2 great matchups, but those projected odds, like I said, are out right now on DraftKings, and Chimaev is at least a minus 455 against everyone. He's a minus 700 against RDR, which is pretty crazy, minus 600 against Amanov, and minus 455 against Hernandez, because Hernandez is really good on the ground. But to me, those odds are telling, and that shows just how many levels ahead Chimaev is from the next group in the middleweight division, because the middleweight division has been on the rise. As I just mentioned, 4 great contenders. There's many more on the way, but I just don't see anyone slowing down or beating Chimaev. I think Chimaev is right up there with Ilia Topuria as the best dominant champions in the UFC, and guys that have the best potential to reign for the longest period. Chimaev is only 30 years old, as Ilya is only 28, so they have the biggest potential to reign for a long period of time. But the great action didn't stop with this fight. This card delivered to a T, and to me even over-delivered. Started off with Tim Elliott with a big second-round submission over Kaya Sakura. He picked up the big underdog victory. Very impressive performance by him. And then MVP put on a clinic against Jared Cannonier in the first 2 rounds. But then the Killer Gorilla bounced back in a big way in the 3rd round, made it close, won that round, but lost the decision. MVP is now atop 15 ranked middleweight contender. Would love to see him in some big fights to come. And then we saw 2 straight spinning back elbow finishes for the first time in history, that we saw 2 of them in a row. First with Carlos Prates knocking out Jeff Neal, and then Aaron Pico was knocked out by Lerone Murphy, and really just some unbelievable stuff. You don't see guys in MMA, especially these days, being knocked out cold, and that is what happened to Aaron Pico and Jeff Neal. Prates and Murphy are 2 surging contenders in their respective divisions. Can't wait to see what's next for them. I want to see Lerone Murphy versus Volk before the end of the year. They should book that. But overall, UFC 319, Duplessis versus Chimaev delivered, and Khamzat Chimaev Boers is now the new middleweight undisputed champion. But who is going to be next for Chimaev? Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.